Welcome all in the lecture of biophysics. In this particular lecture, we will discuss about the energy budget of a cell, and this lecture is actually the continuation of the earlier lecture, which is related to the energy and life of a cell. So I request the viewers to go through the earlier lecture and then you should listen this particular lecture. Now in one of my earlier lecture we estimated the number of all different kinds of macromolecules in a cell and worked out the number of glucose molecules required to build these constituents if glucose is the sole carbon source. And in that case we neglected the significant metabolic work that must be performed to transform the carbon atoms of glucose into the carbon atoms of amino acids, nucleotides, fatty acids, etc. That means you need some energy for the transformation of the glucose molecules into the other types of biomolecules. Now what do you know by metabolism? We have heard this particular term many times. So if we want to give some definition, then we will say in this way, that is metabolism is the general term used to refer to cellular transformations of one molecule into the other molecule. So metabolism is basically the cellular transformation of molecules. The specific transformation of glucose into the amino acid, suppose lysine for example, requires the ordered action of many enzymes, several of which consume energy while performing the necessary transformation. So when there is some transformation, so this transformation process requires some energy. In living cells, energy is stored and transferred in several forms, most commonly in the form of a high energy chemical bond on the molecule adenosine triphosphate or ATP. So how energy is stored? Energy is stored or transferred in a particular chemical bond on a molecule known as ATP. The ultimate source of the energy used to synthesize ATP in fact comes from metabolic breakdown of glucose in a pathway known as glycolysis, so which we will show now. So how ATP is synthesized? ATP is synthesized from the glucose in some particular steps. So what are those steps that I will show you. So this is the structure of the glucose molecule. This is one molecule of the glucose. Now there is some steps, step 1, step 2 and step 3, and after 3 steps fructose 1,6 biphosphate is synthesized. So this is a molecule synthesized from the glucose molecule, but the difference is that you see in the glucose molecule there is single carbon and here there are 2 carbon molecules are there. In the next step what happens, that is 2 molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is synthesized, and there are 3 carbon molecules in this particular types of biomolecules. You see there are 3 carbon molecules are there, and after some steps what happens, 2 molecules of pyruvate are synthesized. So in the, if you consider the last step, that is step 10, then 2 molecules of pyruvates are synthesized, 2 molecules of NADH are synthesized, and the net ATP, I am saying the term net ATP because you see that is here ATP is required and here ATP is generated. So if you consider the total 10 steps, so in these 10 steps the net ATP generation is the 2 molecule. So what we can say, that is this whole process is known as the glycolytic pathway. The outcome of the 10 steps of glycolysis, this overall process is known as the glycolysis. The outcome of the 10 steps of glycolysis is the conversion of a single molecule of glucose into 2 molecules of pyruvate and the concomitant net production of 2 molecules of ATP and 2 molecules of NADH. So, this is what about the glycolysis process, or sometimes we also call it, that is glycolytic pathway. For E. coli growing in the presence of oxygen, so when E. coli grows in the presence of oxygen environment, a single molecule of glucose can be metabolically broken down to form up to 30 molecules of ATP from ADP, since in this case the pyruvate emerging from the glycolysis pathway shown above can be used to fuel further energy producing reaction. So, ultimately what happens, if you grow E. coli in oxygen medium, then total 30 molecules of ATP can be synthesized. This process results in carbon dioxide as a waste product. One interesting question is, what fraction of the glucose taken up by the cell is used to make new molecules? That is, as we are using glucose for synthesizing the new molecule, so what fraction of the glucose must be taken up for this process? That is one important question. And the another question is that what fraction is used to provide the energy to make those new molecules, because you also need some energy to carry out the glycolysis process. So, what is that energy? In this particular discussion, we will estimate the energy budget of the E. coli cell. In order to perform this estimate, we need to understand the nature of energy storage in cells, the typical amounts of energy required for metabolic transformation, and the ways in which cells allocate their energy and material resources. In most cells, energy is stored in a variety of forms that can be interconverted with very high efficiency. The three most commonly used forms are ATP, NADH or NADPH, and transmembrane H plus gradients. We will show these molecules. So, this is a ATP molecule. The name is adenosine triphosphate. Why the name triphosphate? Because you see that is there are total 3 phosphate atoms are there. You see the figure, and this is known as ATP. So, ATP can be converted into the ADP, adenosine diphosphate. So, you see that diphosphate means total 2 phosphate atoms are there in this molecule, and as a product inorganic phosphate, that is one phosphate tetrahedron is broken and inorganic phosphate is produced. So, that is the conversion of ADP to ATP. So, this is one of the form of the molecules that stores the energy in the form of the chemical energy. So, for this conversion, that is from the conversion of ADP to ATP, energy from the sunlight or from food, that is needed. And as ultimately ATP is synthesized and ATP stores the chemical energy, so this energy is available for cellular work and for chemical synthesis. So, the first thing is that when ATP will be produced, at that time you need some energy from sunlight, and from ADP it is converted to the ATP. Then ATP again stores this particular energy in terms of this particular high energy bonds, and the energy stored in the ATP is used for different types of cellular work. Energy for chemical synthesis and for force generation is stored in the form of ATP, which can be converted to ADP plus Pi, and it releases roughly 20 kBT of useful energy. When this conversion takes place, there is a release of the energy of the order of 20 kBT. ADP plus Pi can then be converted back to again ATP. So, this is what about the first form of molecules. Next is that reducing potential is carried in the form of transferable high energy electrons on NADH or the very similar molecule NADPH. Two electrons can be transferred from NADPH to reduce an oxidized organic compound. So, to reduce an oxidized organic compounds, two electrons can be transferred from NADPH, liberating one hydrogen ion because as this you are reducing some organic compound, so H plus will be liberated from NADPH and the oxidized form of the carrier molecule will be NADP plus. As H plus is released, so NADPH will be converted to NADP plus. In this case, the energy liberated by oxidation of 1 mole of NADH can be used to synthesize roughly 2 or 3 moles of ATP. So, this process is shown here. This is NADPH. You see this H atom here. So, this H atom is being released. Then you see this particular structure here. This is NADP plus. As we have released the H, so this is NADP plus and this is NADPH. And in this process, that is in this process, 2 or 3 moles of ATP can be synthesized. And the last one is the transmembrane ion gradients. This is the figure of the transmembrane ion gradients. So these are the ion channels through which H plus ions can move, and this is a structure of the lipid bilayer through which the movement of the ions take place. You see the figure, that is in one side of the lipid bilayer there is a less number of ions, and in another side there is more number of ions. So we can say that this particular portion is in positive potential and this particular portion is the is in the negative potential. Transmembrane ion gradients, particularly in the form of H plus gradients, are also used to store energy. The H plus gradient across the membrane yields a negative potential on the left side as I have shown and a positive potential on the right side. When ion channels open, the ions can flow down their electrochemical gradient. So this acts like a battery because there is storage of some charge. Now this ATP that I have shown in this particular figure, ATP is often referred to as the energy currency of the cell because it can be easily converted into goods and services. The energy liberated by hydrolysis of gamma phosphate bond of ATP to generate a molecule of ADP and an inorganic phosphate Pi is approximately as 20 kBt, that I have already shown you, that is 20 kBt. This particular energy is released for the conversion of ADP plus Pi into ATP. Though the exact value depends upon the concentration of ATP, ADP and Pi. ATP is a useful energy currency because this amount of energy is comparable to the energy consumed in many kinds of biochemical transformations and is intermediate between the thermal energy kBt and the energy of a typical covalent bond, that is 150 kBt. So this particular 20 kBt falls between the thermal energy limit kBt and the energy of the covalent bond, that is 150 kBt. That is why ATP can be considered as the $20 bill of the cell because of its intermediate value in the overall energy economy of the cell. So why $20 bill? Because you see that is spending money in large chunks such as $100 bills will be unmanageable because they are hard to break because these are the chunks of energy. On the other hand, paying just a dollar bill is also a nuisance because it takes many of them to buy anything useful object. So the point is that as the value is 20 kBt, that is why this is economical and this is easily manageable. A second form of chemical energy that is important for metabolic transformation is carried in the form of easily transferable electrons on the molecules NADH and NADPH. I have shown you the figure of NADH and NADPH and how there is conversion of NADH to the NADPH. Many metabolic transformations require that the level of oxidation of an organic molecule be altered. So, in different types of chemical reaction, what happens, that is, oxidation level of organic molecule is altered. Oxidation and reduction reactions involve the transfer of electrons between the compounds. So we have learned these two types of reaction in our chemistry classes. A compound is oxidized when electrons are removed, and we say that is a compound is reduced when electrons are added. For organisms growing in the oxygen rich environment of the modern earth, oxidation reactions are usually spontaneous in nature. However, reduction reactions require some energy input. For reductive biosynthesis, a pair of electrons is usually donated by NADPH. So, for the reductive biosynthesis process, a pair of electrons are donated by NADPH, creating an oxidized form of this carrier molecule NADP plus. So, when this happens, then NADPH becomes NADP plus. Hence, NADPH gives up its hydride ion H minus in the same way that ATP gives up Pi, because when ATP gives up Pi, then ATP becomes ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and in this process NADPH, by giving up the hydride ion, becomes NADP plus. In both the cases, liberation of energy are there, and liberating energy for doing useful biochemical work. So, this energy is used in some biochemical work. Another use of the reducing energy in cells is to establish H plus gradient across the membranes, that I have shown a little bit earlier in the figure. This is an example of the third major form of biological energy storage. The electrical consequences of charge separation by transmembrane ion gradients is one of the important topic that we will discuss later on. Ion gradients are easily interconvertible with either ATP energy or NADH energy. NADH can donate its high energy electrons to electron carrier molecules in the plasma membrane of bacterial cells or in the inner mitochondrial membrane of eukaryotic cells, that ultimately liberate H plus ions on the opposite side, generating a gradient. Gradient means there is in one side of the bilayer there will be more H plus ion, and in the another side there will be less H plus ion. The energy stored in this kind of ion gradient can be converted into ATP through the action of the enzyme ATP synthase. Energy release is effected here by letting ions flow across the membrane through transmembrane proteins such as ATP synthase. This is analogous to the way a hydroelectric plant uses the kinetic energy of water supplied by gravity. Here the role of the water is played by H plus ions. So, motion of water is similar to the motion of the H plus ion across the channels. However, instead of gravity means it is giving some energy. So, instead of gravity, electrostatic and entropic forces drive the flow of the ions. So, here the driving forces are given from the electrostatic force or entropic force, and the ATP synthase plays the role of the turbine. So, as in the hydroelectric plant there is turbine, so here the ATP synthase plays a similar kind of role. Now, how do all of these forms of energy contribute to the synthesis of the biological molecules that make up the cell? Conversion of a carbon source such as glucose into the carbon skeletons of any of the other necessary organic molecules such as amino acids, nucleotides, phospholipids, etc., proceeds through an intricate series of stepwise chemical transformations where metabolic enzymes catalyze the rearrangement of atoms within a substrate molecule, the cleavage of covalent chemical bonds in the substrate, and the formation of new covalent bonds. So, now I will show you a figure that gives a schematic of the chain of reactions connecting the food source, for example glucose, to the final product, namely to cells. So, now look at the figure. So, this is a typical bacterial cell, and from one bacterial cell two bacterial cells are produced ultimately. Now, how these two cells are produced? So, at first you need some energy. So, you see the term, that is heterotrophy. It means that is you need some organic nutrient, and autotrophy means you need some CO2 plus inorganic energy source, and the third form is the phototrophy, that means you need some CO2 and light. Energy and mass costs to make a new bacterial cell. So, if you want to make a new bacterial cell, then you will need some energy and you will need some mass. So, mass is the preliminary bacterial cell and energy you are taking from outside. This diagram illustrates the flow of materials and energy required for bacterial duplication. So, there is a diagram, you see that this is a diagram, and ultimately this diagram suggests that ultimately two bacterial cells will be produced through some particular intermediate processes. Nutrients are taken from the environment. So, you need some nutrients from the environment for these chain reactions, either organic molecules provided by other organisms. So, this particular nutrients we can collect from other type of organic molecules, that means from other organisms, or it may be in the form of carbon dioxide and light in the case of photosynthetic bacteria. If the bacteria is photosynthetic, then the nutrients will be in the form of carbon dioxide and light, together with a few inorganic ions such as phosphate, sulfate and ammonium. So, you need some ions, phosphate ion, sulfate ion and ammonium ion. The carbon sources consumed by the bacterium are converted into precursor metabolites and then into the fatty acids, sugars, amino acids and nucleotides that are used to build macromolecules. Now, you see the figure, that is these are the nutrients and you need some ions, for example this phosphate ion, sulfate ion, ammonium ion. These ions are needed. Then you need some energy, it may be in the form of ATP or ion gradient, or it may be some reducing power provided by the NADP or NADPH, and there will be some precursor metabolites, that is there will be some precursor metabolites like glucose, fructose, pentose, etc. Through these precursor metabolites, at first fatty acids, sugars, amino acids, nucleotides will be synthesized in the first step. In the second step, from these particular macromolecules, lipid, lipopolysaccharide, glycogen, murein, protein, RNA, DNA, these will be synthesized, and in the last step different components of a structure will be produced, for example flagella, envelope, cytosol, ribosome, nucleoids, etc. So, these are the series of processes by which from a particular bacterial cell two bacterial cells are produced. The product of one biochemical reaction in this kind of biochemical pathway goes on to be the substrate in the next reaction. So, product of one biochemical reaction will be that will act as the substrate of the next biochemical reaction, because this is a chain type of reaction. If you look at this figure carefully, that is step by step from the precursor metabolite these components are being synthesized, then they will act as a substrate, then this new level of molecules will be synthesized, then the structure of the cells will be synthesized. In the diagram, the chain of reactions is denoted by fueling products, building blocks, macromolecules and structures. That is, step by step we are naming those steps as fueling products, building blocks. Fueling products, these are the fueling products. This particular shaded portion, the molecules given here, we are naming them fueling products. Then fatty acids, sugars, amino acid, nucleotides, we are calling them as building blocks. And this lipid, glycogen, murein, protein, RNA, DNA, we are calling them as macromolecule. Then envelope, flagella, pili, cytosol, ribosome, nucleoids, they are synthesized and we are calling them as structure, and basically these structures form the new bacterial cell. All organic molecules within the cell are linked to one another through an intricate and highly interconnected network or web of metabolic reactions. So, from the figure it is very clear that all the organic molecules are linked with one another. The overall architecture of the network is dominated by the existence of critical nodes represented by important intermediate molecules such as the precursor metabolites. So, that can in turn be converted into various final products. So, one level of product that is converted into the other level of products. So, that is the chain reaction. A highly schematized diagram of one of the most important metabolic network, that is glycolysis of E. coli, that we have already discussed in earlier. This overall set of transformation takes place, that is in the glycolysis process, through 10 distinct chemical steps that we have discussed. Ultimately, that is pyruvate and ATP and NADH are synthesized. We have already discussed about that process. Pyruvate in turn can be used to synthesize a variety of amino acids or fatty acids. As glucose is broken down in the form of pyruvate, some of the chemical energy stored in its covalent bond is used to synthesize ATP and NADH. These high energy carrier molecules, which we have already demonstrated, these high energy carrier molecules can then donate their energy to drive forward biosynthetic reactions that are not intrinsically energetically favorable, because we know that is all the energies are not energetically favorable, all the chemical reaction. That is why we have to supply some energy, and this energy comes from the ATP and NADH. A useful way to envision the energetic transformation during glycolysis is to picture such molecular species as having a characteristic energy, and as glucose goes through its series of transformations, the molecule travels up and down on a hilly energy landscape. For real molecules such as the intermediate in the glycolytic pathway, the energy of a particular species depends not only on its molecular structure but also on its concentration in the cell. This general framework has prepared us to estimate the amount of glucose needed to provide energy for a single round of cell division compared with the amount required to provide structural building blocks. Accurate estimation of this number requires a detailed examination of each of the biosynthetic pathways in E. coli. We have already introduced one of the biosynthetic pathway, that is the glycolysis, but for accurate estimation of this number requires a detailed examination of each of the biosynthetic pathways in E. coli and tabulation of the energy consumed or liberated at every enzymatic step. Such calculations have been undertaken by brave biochemists. So, we can in this way, from this particular diagram, and if we carefully analyze, that is every types of reaction, then we can generally estimate, that is energy required to make a bacterial cell. But in this lecture we will not going to discuss the energy that is required for making a bacterial cell, but we have just elaborated, that is how we can calculate this type of energy. And in the next lecture we will again, that is discuss about the elementary level of this particular process for the determination of energy required to make a bacterial cell. So, I hope that is so far what I have discussed you have understood, and this particular content of the lecture I have taken from the textbook Physical Biology of the Cell, written by Rob Phillips, and I request the viewers to go through that textbook again for further understanding of the lecture that I have delivered, and I thank you all who have listened this lecture.